Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in for the December edition of the Leadership Conversations with NHRDN. I'm Shivani. I'm a part of the NHRDN YTC, and I'm your moderator for this conversation today. Joining me today are our two esteemed guests, Siddharth Vishwanath and Shankar Narayanan, from whom we hope to learn a lot from their diverse industry experiences. I'll just take a brief moment to introduce our panelists who have a very diverse and deep set of experiences ranging across industries. Beginning first with Shankar. Shankar is a PNL HR leader and transformation expert with over 2 decades of HR and consulting experience across 10 industries, including tech, telecom, energy, consumer, and industrial sectors, in organizations of varying sizes, maturity levels, and cultures across different geographies as well. What's very interesting about Shankar is just the width and depth of exposure and experience Shankar has had across industries as well as disciplines in HR, and how he has led organizations through very strategic changes, be it in terms of setting up or maturing HR processes and systems, helping organizations refresh their talent agenda as the business strategy has changed, and also in helping organizations up level and innovate on their talent priorities. We're very excited to have you amongst us, Shankar. Shankar, you're on mute.
Thank you, Shivani. I'm glad to be here.
Great. And our next speaker for today, we have Siddharth Vishwanath, who's the head talent partner at Ather Energy. As many of you would know here on the call, Ather Energy is an Indian organization that manufactures electric vehicles. And Siddharth too packs a very diverse experience within the HR domain across brands as diverse and well known as Sony Entertainment Television, Renault India, Arvind Sports, Zivame, Mensa Brands, and of course, Ather Energy in his most current stint. What I find very interesting in all that Siddharth has done is that it seems he's almost helped organizations set up and be who they are, working across HR functions, be it performance, communication, rewards, HR business partnering. So, both our panelists today are clearly very well equipped to tell us how they have partnered with organizations in their strategy. Siddharth, we are very glad and excited to have you amongst us here and to learn from you today.
The pleasure's mine. Thank you.
Great. So, thanks to our panelists. Now, just a few quick housekeeping rules before we enter the conversation. We will be in a conversation with the panelists, asking them a few questions to understand better their perspectives on the topic that we have today, which is how do you align HR strategy with business objectives? But don't worry, at all times, we'll ensure that your questions to the panelists are also asked. There will be opportunities within the conversation where we will ask some of you to raise your hands, unmute yourself, and ask questions. So look out for those. And in the meanwhile, we'll request you to be on mute so that the panelists are able to share their perspectives at length. So with that, we'll get started. So my first question to both Shankar and Siddharth, to both of you, right? Given how closely you've partnered with businesses across different strategic changes, uh, I would want to first understand what has been the most meaningful experience you've had in terms of seeing a strategy planning exercise, and for what reasons was this meaningful within any of the organizations? We don't need to name the organization, and this is a disclaimer to all audiences here that any views expressed by our panelists through the course of the session today are completely their own. They do not represent those of the organization, so please be mindful of that. But with that, to both of you, if you could look back and think of one strategy planning exercise, be it for an initiative or for a unit, what was one experience that was meaningful and what made it so meaningful for you? Siddharth, if you'd like to go first.
Um, well, thanks, Shivani. I want to start off and maybe add my own flavor to this as well. Like you said, I've had the opportunity of working with organizations as young as maybe 10 team members strong, and I've also worked with organizations that are like 5,000 or a lakh. Um, And I want to tell you that the experience in all of these in working in HR actually differs quite a lot, right? In organizations that are very, very young, maybe you're not part of the strategy planning exercise, right? It's a founder, it's a business owner who has started this exercise, and he has this is his idea. It's
Hmm.
his uh, it's his attempt at finding a product market fit. It's his attempt of getting unit economics right. It's an attempt at getting an A team there to get his idea to the market. But slowly, as the organization starts getting into a place where the organization identifies that it's the people that are uh, at the core of all that they're going to do, and when they bring in your HR person, or how we call it as people operations and strategy, or POPs at ATA, onto the table, you realize that every decision has to be seen from various lenses. It's not just a business lens or a financial lens or a supply chain lens or a people lens. It's all the lenses. uh, and it's when you're able to bring all your experiences from whatever experiences you've had to the table, to kind of contribute and say, okay, I see how you're seeing this from a financial lens, but in my experience, this could be the flaw in that. This could be how we could falter in this, and maybe we could look at it this way, and this could be a more well-rounded method of looking at it. And when the leader or the leadership or the organization recognizes that it's the well-rounded perspective
Hmm.
that is creating a org strategy and not just a business strategy in isolation. It's pardon me. That it is very, very fruitful. I'd love to give you more examples as we go, but since we're just getting started, I just want to leave you with that large thought that not every strategy planning exercise is something that people decisions have always been taken into account where I've been
Hmm.
there, and there have been strategy planning exercises where those sessions have not been conducted without the right HR leader or the right HR person in the room as well. So maybe that's a tangential view from what you were looking to get, but I'll just start off with that really, really contrarian view.
No, thanks for sharing that, Siddharth. That really does ground us all in reality because I think across this group, we would have had varied experiences, like you said, where right from it not perhaps being structured, so being too so structured that the right leaders need to be in the room. But I love the point that you made about how you show up as a partner by making a point that this is not the people strategy or this is not the business strategy, but this is the overall organizational strategy. It's common to everyone. So thanks for grounding us in that. Shankar, over to you for your opening views as well.
I mean, yeah, thanks, Shivani, and thanks, Siddharth. See, it's like asking you to pick your favorite child, right? I mean, which strategy exercise that you like. So it's very difficult one. That said, the one that I found post facto with the benefit of some hindsight, which was most impactful, is an exercise that we did where there was a lot of collective participation. Because usually people who craft strategies are bright people in most organizations. I think in all organizations rather of any size and competitiveness. What makes the strategy formulation exercise most valuable is you involve a wide set of people from your organization. You obviously take an external perspective because the wider participation ensures that there is a certain ambition that you set, and people start identifying themselves with that particular ambition and the strategy. And that provides a lot of collective energy, glue, inspiration to go and pursue it. And I have seen this come to life in a very real way, because usually we read this in textbooks. It doesn't happen often, but it can be done. I have seen this being done, and people have really bought into the organization's ambitions as their personal ambitions. So I think that collective process with a lot of inspiration as an end outcome of this exercise goes a long way in aligning people, because ultimately you just don't want to make a great strategy. You want people to be marching ahead in unison along with that.
That's true. That's true. I think that's a very important point, Shankar, that you set us out with, which is that how much can you broad base it? How much can you bring it to life for those within the organization who are going to execute on it? Great point on that. As we hearing from all of you, with the kind of diverse experiences you've had of strategy planning or hope they would be a certain way, uh, what role have you seen HR play within these different exercises in your experience? And as you look back, what in your view has been the most meaningful either contribution or point of view or perspective in some of these exercises that the HR leader or the HR team within the room was able to add, for our audiences here to just be mindful of that, that if you enter the conversation, then maybe what's a hat, what's a thought, what's a point of view you must go prepared with so that you're adding value. So, Siddharth, if you would want to take this first, and then we'll come to you, Shankar.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be making notes as I go. Um,
You and me
so
both.
thank you. So look, I'll give you a again. I'm going to make it a little more personal to my experience so that I can bring that to you. I my last few experiences have been also in retail, and when I say also in retail, there have been some hybrid setups where in retail and e-commerce and uh, you know um, marketplaces, etc. as well. Uh, and I joined Aether as well when we were trying to increase our retail presence, our retail store growth, right? So let me take an example of how one can start thinking about HR or people when you're thinking about business strategy. And one example is, when you're doing, say, if you have a retail business, right? One of the questions that you get asked is, do you want to open your own stores, or do you want,
Mm,
like a partnership or a franchisee to open stores, right? And how do you normally answer that? And you normally think that this is a business decision. This is obviously just financial because there's margins involved, and there is, how much do you pay somebody, and how do you distribute, and logistics and supply chain is involved, right? And opening of the stores and physical presence, etc. involved, right? But there's a very strong people angle to it. Sometimes overlooking the people angle in this decision can kind of lead the difference between growth and then or immediate death. Um, Example: uh, when you're opening retail stores, do you know that sometimes in retail, um, attrition can be as high as 70%, 60%, and that's not unheard of, right? And
mm,
if you're a new retail organization trying to do this without this knowledge, uh, and then you start opening your own stores, and you open, say, 100 stores of yourselves, you're going to kill yourself because you haven't thought about the effort of the amount of hiring, the amount of training, the amount of upskilling, the amount of thinking of succession, thinking of how you're going to maintain customer satisfaction, customer standard, etc., etc. Right? Versus if you were to just go out and say, I'm going to let somebody else run my stores all the time, then every store is just going to have a different experience. It's not going to be like an Apple store where every
mm,
store looks and feels the same. Just maybe talk about some other things as well. Uh, you know, when you're hiring talent, not every talent in every part of the country is the same. It's not the same
mm,
expectation. It's not the same expectations in terms of the quality of work, the quantity of work, the timelines of work, pay, right? What it means like in terms of the job scope, um, and so compliances, right? They're all different. So when you have somebody who has seen, say, retail, and who comes into the table by saying that, hey, this conversation about whether I should have my own stores or somebody else's stores is not just a business conversation. It's also very much a people conversation. And these are the factors. Have you considered them? Because they will play a very big part in in making the decision of whether to open your own stores or to let somebody else run it, or to do it in a hybrid manner, or to
Mm.
kind of start off one way and then kind of go towards the other. So you can start off your own way, open 5 stores, learn what it's like, and then standardize processes, write them down, let them mature, and then let your distributors or franchisee come in and let them know that these are our SOPs, these are our processes, this is what this store looks like and feels like, and the customer's experience. So when I brought in these experiences to my current role or the previous role, I found that this was very value adding to the leadership, and we were able to make decisions that were very well rounded for the business.
I think what I'm really taking away from this is to sort of drive in the point that, like you said, business operations and people operations are not necessarily separate. People operations will end up impacting every day of all operations. So, providing that context and, like you said, the point of views, the specific compliances, the talent market, how that's going to impact the business is so critical. And I can understand, as you've enabled so many businesses to set up and take off, how critical an insight that would be, perhaps for leaders who want to get started really fast. So thanks for sharing that. Shankar, I'd want to bring you in also now, from your for your perspectives on where do you think we add most insights or point of view.
I think it significantly depends on the industry that you're part of, Shivani. Right? I mean, there are certain industries which are what I would call as very talent-led. For example, the industry that I represent, professional services, technology, because talent is all that we have. And then, you have the entire spectrum of industries and the kind of approach strategy that organizations adopt as well. So I think it's going to be very, very different, in different industries. From my experience, predominantly, if the question is, does the talent strategy or the people strategy influence or shape the business strategy? I think it does in some cases, but not in most. Usually, you frame the business strategy and then go solve for the talent based on that, rather
Hmm.
than talent being an input into the strategy itself. I mean, that's how I have seen it play out in most cases. That being said, what can make a participant from HR add more value is, one is, definitely to understand the business. I think that's like a table stakes. If you don't understand the business and what value levels the business has and where does talent come into the picture, the that is like, basic input. I would say it's not a differentiator, but the differentiation that HR can bring in at this stage of strategy formulation would be a lot of data and insights on what kind of talent is available in the market, where have we been successful in attracting or in developing the talent. Therefore, if you want to apply the talent lens, as Siddharth was saying, to a strategy that is being formulated, you can really test it out to see whether what we are saying is something that we can do, or what is it that we need to be able to get right to ensure that we get the talent piece in place. Right? Your brand attractiveness, your ability to attract top talent
Hmm.
in some places, right? I mean, what has been your cycle time in attracting the talent, right? How well you've been able to groom. If the market does not have the talent, then the obvious question is, can you develop the talent, and what's been your history and experience and success or otherwise in building that kind of a talent out. So a lot of data based on the organization's own experience along these dimensions and what is available in the market, right? And definitely a lot of competitive intelligence as well. How have other companies, if you're a first mover in the market, you will not have too many examples of it, but
Hmm.
oftentimes you're not the first mover in the market. You can also bring in the experiences of other companies as well. This conversation can become very, very rich, and you can engage the audience provided you have the kind of data and insights, either your own or from the market or from competition. That's what I would recommend that HR people go prepared with when they want to contribute into a strategy formulation exercise.
Thanks so much for sharing it. And I think I particularly appreciate, Shankar, the point you had around almost like showing the mirror back to the org, right? Like you said, on what's been its own history in a particular area with a particular kind of effort targeted at a talent cohort, perhaps. And so that they're always grounded in what the org can or cannot do, like what's the gap that it needs to bridge. talent wise for a particular strategy. And like you said, being equipped with insights, internal as well as competitive, is critical, so that you're providing that intelligence to your business stakeholders. I think so far from both you and Siddharth, we've got a sense of what a good business strategy process perhaps could look like, and how would HR show up. Of course, that would vary. But now let's say that we do have a strategy in place, and we've also, as partners, set on ground what we would be doing and what we'd be going ahead with. Now, as we enter the year, there are pivots, there are changes, there is prioritization, deprioritization. What efforts do you make with your teams to stay aligned with these changes? Like, as the strategies changed, any pivots have happened. How do you ensure that your teams are agile, are able to pivot with the business, and one is able to maintain a particular strategy in alignment with the business? Because in some areas that can be tougher, like hiring cycles are longer. Sometimes you've planned for the entire, mostly you have planned for the entire year. Compliances take a long period. So how do you approach these pivots in order to ensure that the HR strategy remains aligned with what was agreed with business, and how the business is also pivoting? Perhaps, Shankar, if you'd want to go first, and then
Yeah, I
over.
think, see, on this one, it's very, very important, Shivani, to make sure that we understand strategy and tactics and what each one means, right? Because by definition, strategy should not change too often. I do understand that companies are agile and they need to change. And this is also a significant factor of the industry in which you operate. The reality today is that almost every industry is getting disrupted, but not to the same extent. So to the extent, the industry that you're operating in, your strategy can, the cycle time of the relevance of your strategy can change. So I think it is important to understand what those rhythms and cycle times in which you really relook at strategy and change it. That being said, once you understand the cycle time in which you need to change it and when those real big pivots are going to happen, it is extremely important to achieve two things in my view. One is to again segregate strategy and tactics. And what do I mean by that? Right? I mean, if you if from the talent lens, right? I mean, you realize that this year you've not done well, right? You can't provide competitive rewards, or you can't provide bonuses, right? Does it mean a change in strategy? No, it's not a change in strategy, right? I mean, you need to understand what tactically that you need to do at that point in time to ensure that you tide over, a short-term profitability or margin issue, but don't lose of sight of the strategy, which could be around some of your values, the brand attractiveness, getting the talent that is going to provide the greatest value, for your most important strategic objectives. So getting this distinction clear between strategy and tactics is important, because not everything is, strategic, to be frank. I mean, not everything is not strategic. That being said, to know whether we are staying aligned with the strategy itself, see, we need to bring in my view, a lot of business, the rigor with which finance measures itself, or operations measures itself, or marketing measures itself. If you translate the strategy into a plan and goals, by timeline, you need to be able to establish that this is what we will do by this time, and this is what we will achieve, whether it's building certain talent, attracting certain talent, or putting in place some systems, technology, processes, and so on and so forth, and see how you're doing against it. That project management discipline and tracking of what you're doing is important. It could also mean oftentimes that you put yourself under scrutiny. uh, but if you want to be influential in an organization, you have to sign up for those large cross-functional initiatives, which will not only reside within the boundaries of HR, right? You will have to be able to influence sometimes the market and sometimes other functions as well. So that would be my point, to understand the difference between strategy and tactics. And when you do something tactically, you don't compromise the strategy, or the other way around. And to ensure that you have your clear, I mean, you put it up and say this is the goal that we will achieve, and keep track of it to see whether you're achieving the goals or not, and adjust accordingly. That bit of accountability is extremely important in the process, to know whether you're staying aligned or not. And if something changes in the business, you have a seat on the table. Particularly if you're a very senior person, you would know what's changing in the business. You will have your whatever, your weekly, fortnightly cadence with the business, and you will understand what's changing, and you can make the pivot pretty quickly as well.
I think that's very, valid and implementable wisdom, like you said. it all lies in the rigor of your execution, the processes you put in place, the cadences you set up, and just how closely you project manage it. Yes, thanks for sharing that, Shankar. So that your perspectives on pivoting, keeping aligned, how do you
No,
approach it?
it's hard to follow what Shankar after what Shankar has said, because he's covered most of it. What I just want to maybe reiterate from what I hear from Shankar, and he's right in the sense that uh, the contrast here is that Shankar comes from a large organization, where business strategy will not change. At least for the year, for 2 years, for 5 years, you are in an organization that is mature. I have in the past come from organizations that are very, very nascent, very, very they haven't found their feet yet. They're evolving. They're startups, and like Shankar said, the cycle times there are actually quite fast. Uh, the strategy is to experiment sometimes, right?
Mm,
Uh, and you're trying to find your feet. You're trying to find the product market fit. You're trying with different experimental models of how the business can grow. Um, and when that happens, I still agree with Shankar in that strategy will not change. Is who you are as a core. What your values are, what you stand for, how you wish to attract talent, what kind of talent do you wish to attract, how do you wish to retain them, what is the value proposition for somebody to come and join you, what is the kind of work that they will get to do, what is the uh, you know uh, y- the all of the HR jargons that we use, they will not change unless your business changes drastically in the middle of that cycle, and then you're a whole different organization, and then you may have to rethink the strategy. But I agree with Shankar in that no matter what your cycle time is,
mm,
uh, even if your business cycle times are much shorter, like in small organizations, or larger, like in large organizations, strategy may not change between the year or even between years. You may do some tactical things to adapt to the local changes here and now, but you'll probably stick to who you are as an organization.
Yeah. And one more point, if I may add as well, and as I was listening to Siddharth, see, a lot has got to do with the kind of capital investment, or what is the investment cycle of the business as well.
mm,
I think that is extremely important to understand, because you realize that you want to enter a particular space, you've hired some people, and then you realize that no, we want to stop it and stuff for that. I mean, the quick question is, can you pivot those people to somewhere else, or you let them go? I mean, those are, I would say, tactical decisions, right? So, when you understand the rhythm and the cycle time of, of the operation of the business, the volatility, most importantly, where are you committing your money, right? And where are you committing your money? Where are you committing your reputation? And how transparent can you be, so that you realize that if the strategy is still very loose and non-formulated, you need to be able to hedge your bets and see how you in from the kind of HR decisions that you make, which is about hiring somebody, paying a certain amount of money, or whatever, right? Like the way an investment professional will try to balance their risks, you also need to understand what is it that is certain, what is it that is not so certain, and what are those talent investments, how do you play them out, and how do you balance the risks around it. Because
mm.
otherwise, you may be saddled with some decisions that you've taken, that needs to be undone. You're stuck there, and you can't move from the position that you're in, and so on and so forth. So
That's true. I think, rightly said, Shankar, that you're constantly balancing your bets. The environment is changing for everyone, sometimes at a faster pace, sometimes at a slower for some businesses. But knowing the business, perhaps knowing what are the key drivers that are driving any speed or pivot is very critical to knowing that what will you prioritize, deprioritize, and shift around. So, thanks for sharing both of those perspectives, and I love how diverse they are. I'm sure a lot of us in the group can relate with both ends of the spectrum. Uh, just a quick call out to our audience members right now. If you have any questions that you've been thinking of that have been striking you so far, just give me the liberty to ask one more, and then we'll come to you and you can raise your hands, and then we'll ask you to unmute yourselves and ask the question that you have. But before that, I'll just ask one more question I had before we let in the audience also with their questions. Uh, we've discussed so far about how we make it not seem like it's the people strategy is different from the org strategy, that everybody is essentially working towards the same big picture, we are just contributing to it. But the reality is that some of us in different units, etc., that we support have been met with scenarios where there is a tendency to say that, okay, this is what HR does, this is what business does, right? Like, you, this is your swim lane, go ahead, you develop talent, you hire talent, and one does the rest. Have you had experiences where you've had to coach leaders to look at it as one big picture? And if you know, if you could share what the challenge was over there, and how did you overcome? How did you coach a leader, without naming names or examples? But what was that process like, and how were you able to coach them to see it as one strategy that everybody was working towards, and ensuring that they own the talent decisions as well? Siddharth, if you would like to go first on this one.
Yeah, I'd like to take a step back uh, and think about. So there's a business leader, right? Let's just call them person A, and they have 20, 25 years of experience in doing what they do best, and that's why they're there. And now you are their HR talent partner, business partner, strategic partner, whatever you call them. Why should they be coached by you? Is the question that you must ask yourself. What is it that you bring to the table that the business leader needs to be coached by you, or is should be open to be coached by you? And when I approach
Mm.
that problem like that, I approach it in a way where I I don't think I have always been credible enough. Not always. At this point, I can comfortably say that I've had many instances where I've worked with the leaders and coached them. But the first thing is I have to establish my functional credibility, right? That I bring to the table some knowledge about people practices, about talent uh, that they can learn from, or they can use that information and leverage it to make better decisions for business, right? Second is, do I understand the business context? So Shankar was talking about this, right? Business context is business context is table stakes. But is it table stakes? It's not always that well understood. Do you understand business at the level at which they understand business? And if you do, then that is going to get them a step closer, saying, okay, this person understands talent. They also understand my business. A
Mm.
third step is to establish trust. Are they on my side? Are we all on the same page? Are we working towards the same goal? Or do we have the same priorities? Do we have the same agenda? If not, it can always be seen as, oh, HR is trying to make me do something, or they're trying to help me change something, but this is not what I want to do, right? If all these three things of functional credibility, understanding of the business context in detail, real business context, and trust, all three kind of fall together, it just works like magic. And I can tell you without taking an example per se that my leaders and I, we just kind of uh, you know we work like a woven thread where you couldn't tell whether a decision was made by me or by the leader, or by us together. It's just something that comes from a place of unison and collaboration, and kind of a cross-functional approach to problem solving, right? um, yeah, I just want to leave it at that philosophical level. I don't really have an example to give you per se. There have been so many critical instances where uh, I've been able to just tell a business leader that the decision that they're taking on business may be actually a wrong one, and it's got nothing to do with a people angle to it.
Mm.
Just our credibility and our trust and our mutual respect towards each other was so high that they were able to see me as just a peer and an equal, rather than seeing me as an HR person versus them as a business person. And I think that is where real HR business partnership, or real HR strategy and implementation happens.
No, thanks for sharing that, Siddharth. That's really empowering. It's literally like a mental model to work with when you're entering a conversation, that are you going with enough functional credibility? Have you established that? Are you seen as trusted, and do you know the business? So I think those can be three things to definitely keep in mind when looking at a conversation. Shankar, what would be your views on this?
I agree with Siddharth. Trust gets built over time, and credibility, your objectivity, and repeatedly how you have demonstrated these things is what helps you to build that trust. One good question to, again, the three things that I wanted to add here. One is it an organization-wide issue in terms of owning some of the talent decisions or doing things in a certain way? If it is a very organizational pattern across different leaders, then you need to intervene, in a certain way at a certain level. If it is an individual leader who is demonstrating or certain behaviors or not demonstrating certain behaviors, that has a different approach, and there, all that Siddharth said in terms of your trust equation with that person, credibility, and sometimes you bring your skills of being able to influence come into the picture. But equally, it is important to not have this doctor-patient kind of a mental model. I think that is what Siddharth is saying. Quite often we fall into the trap of thinking that, here is a person who doesn't understand talent, and, I have to go and coach him or her kind of stuff. That is a sure recipe for conflicts. And equally, I would also, and the problem exists, right? I mean, we do have bad managers. We do. I'm not saying that there are no bad managers. There are a lot of bad managers. There is work to be done, but it's important, as to what frame of mind we approach it from. The last point that I want to make is, I think as HR partners, it is very, very important for us to keep a track of what are the issues that our business leaders reach out to us for. Is it do they tell you, reach out to you to say, give this person so much money, or hire this individual, that kind of a transactional things? Or are they telling, how do I handle this particular situation, right? Or is it a tricky personal employee situation that they reach out to you for? Or is it some real personal dilemma that they have on how to deal with the situation that they reach out to you for? These are good signals to know where you stand in the value that they see in you, and that helps you to calibrate and then build that influence as well, so that you can easily know, and it's very easy. It's a sample, right? In a year, what are the 10 reasons, or 5 times a business leader has reached out to you, and what are those reasons, right? That clearly tells you what they value you for. If they don't value you for what you are, then definitely you need to make some perception changes and bring that value to the table as well.
But I think that's a great check that all of us can do time to time when whenever in the year we sit back and examine what capabilities we need to sort of further up level on. This is a good personal feedback means to use, and then take it from there, build from there. I had promised I'll be asking one question, so now I'll open it up for the audiences. Any one of you would want to ask, you can just raise your hand. We'll ask you to unmute yourselves, and then you can ask your question. I'll pause for a second to give you some time to just collect your thoughts, but feel free to ask. Okay, I don't see any raised hands. Yeah, I think there's one person. Yeah, Jagbeer, you've raised your hand, so you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Please call out which panelist you'd want to address the question to as well. Go ahead, Jagbeer.
Hi, good afternoon. The question is open for all, and it's not a question, it's an suggestion and input that I seek from both the panelists. My query and the situation that to which I am expecting a guidance. We all, as like in an opening note also, we have learned that many of the business leaders do not welcome HR leaders to contribute in the business strategies. Like, whereas on the other hand, there are certain people who invite and who get a very, very good amount of input, and that business grows in multiple ways. Now, to HR folks who are in the first cadre or first sort of culture, so what strategy as an HR should adopt so that there is an open invitation over the period of time and their voices get heard, their inputs get recognized, and even in business strategies, they get a red carpet welcome. So, how, as an HR, should we frame that strategy so that HR people feel valued and feel welcomed to the business strategies?
Thanks, Jagbi, for that question. Shankar, would you want to take it first?
Yeah, just one I can relate to some examples as well. Jagbir, if I got the name right. Uh, two ways I would like to answer this question. One is that if you don't get the invitation, please remember that it may not just be you who's the reason. Oftentimes I've realized that leaders carry the baggage of the past HR people that they've interacted with and see new HR people through that lens as well. So it may got to do nothing with you. That's what they've been used to with the HR people in the past, and they may just be carrying the baggage. In which case, there's a little bit more work to do. There's a bit of empathy and understanding that you need to demonstrate to understand that you're not just trying to prove yourself, but you're trying to disprove the baggage that they're carrying. That's number one. See, number two is that understand the business, understand their problems, be a solution to their problems. It's as simple as that. People will reach out to you if you solve their problems. So understand what their problems are and see what you can do to solve them from a talent standpoint. You need to understand, you definitely need to understand the business. There is an element of knowledge, there is an element of expertise, that you build in. But see an opening, you see where is the area that they need your help. Start there, solve those problems, and slowly build your knowledge and expertise, and then get into their inner proximity circle. That's the way to do it. I mean, that's one approach, and be of value first to them in places where they seek your value, and then go from there. But an important criteria to be invited at a strategic level is you must be able to understand the business and the strategy and to be able to contribute at a very, very meaningful level. It's a credibility and thing that you need to build as well. That's what I would say here.
Yeah, not much to add. It's the same, holy trinity of credibility, business context, and trust is what Shankar is also saying in different words. That find an opening. Everybody likes problems to be solved. Not everybody is good at everything. See how you can help them, and see how you can add value to them, and use that as an opportunity to kind of start partnering with them. Not necessarily in the areas that you want to partner with them on, but start with where they need help.
Yeah, complementarity, right? I mean, where can you complement them rather than substitute them? So yeah.
And it's not always a very short journey. If you want everything to happen quite early, now in your career, this year, sometimes this may take longer, in which case people may not have the patience, and they may say that this organization is not for me. I brand this organization as not mature, not ready for mature HR practices, and then move on, saying that, look, I've got other things to learn. Or you could stay on, be patient, be perseverant, be consistent with your delivery, establish yourself as an authority in talent, and then you'll get there. Yeah. I hope that answers.
Thanks, Jagbi, for that question. And thank you so much, Shankar and Siddharth. I think what I'm also taking away from that answer is just empathy, right? Like deep empathy to meet the person where they are, help solve the problem that's really their big, hairy problem right now, and then take it from there. We have time for one more audience question. I see, Dr. Velalar, that you've asked a question on chat. Would you also like to unmute yourself and ask it directly?
Yes, I am Ilango here. How far AI is going to replace the HR professionals and their strategy? That is what my question.
Would you want to address it to a particular panelist?
No, let them tell
Okay.
whoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a question that CEOs are really grappling with, not just for HR, Dr. Ilango. I can tell you that it's very difficult to give a look at a crystal ball and say, but clearly AI is here to stay. Uh, the nature of impact it will have and the rapidity of it is something that is not known, to be frank. But there are some very knowledgeable, experienced people say that what the real value of experience that somebody brings in is having seen multiple situations, the knowledge and the insights that they've gained through it is something that the machine can easily take over. And if it does happen, my own view is that human beings or HR professionals will be called upon to spend more and more time on why we chose to become HR professionals, which is to help people become successful. Machine cannot demonstrate empathy. Machine will find it very difficult to inspire. You may admire a machine, but a machine will unlikely inspire you. So some of those back to basics of HR is something that we may have to go back to as well. But frankly speaking, I don't have a forecast of how much it will impact. But definitely there is going to be disruption. Definitely there is going to be disruption. There is no doubt about it. Where, how far, how fast is something that I think the whole world is trying to figure out.
Because
I'm
now
I'm not
AI is
I'm not
going to dominate. AI is going to dominate the world now in future.
Okay.
That is why I asked the question.
no, if I may just add my 2 cents, I don't think and I'm the eternal optimist. I don't think AI is going to replace people who make HR strategy, at least not in the near future. Sure, AI can help you see through data trends, tell you a story, help you make a better HR strategy, help you implement the strategy, and help people who work in HR more efficient with implementing of that strategy. AI is certainly going. It's already started doing that, and I can see it. But the optimist in me says that it will still take people to build your to understand people, to understand people's aspirations, their needs, their motivations, what makes people move, work, perform, outperform, join organizations, leave organizations. Um, I think you still need people to understand people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in half, just if I can add, the absence of too much science in HR may lend itself, some bit of human specialization that machines can't, really replace. But there will be machines. I mean, I agree with you that machines will take over a lot of tasks that we do. But will they take over the strategy and the empathy part of it is something to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Can
ahead,
I?
Yuresh. You can ask your
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I have a question for Shankar. That so you give an example of aligning HR strategy, particularly in terms of talent requirement, so available talent, and then what you need to develop. So can you give some example of a business strategy other than I mean HR strategy aligned with the business strategy in other areas of HR, like we just spoke about talents strategy, but what about other areas like compensation, or you can say performance management systems, or any other area that in terms of policies and all that? If you can give some examples, it will help people to understand it better.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about strategy, right, or talent strategy or HR strategy, there are three words that we use. It's important as to be very clear about what problem will the strategy solve. Oftentimes, strategy documents ends up being a series of initiatives without very little focus on what is it really trying to solve for. There are three parts, that I have found helpful as a framework to know what will strategy solve for. And then I'll ask you a question. I'll answer your question in the context of that. One is accessing talent, which second could be creating talent, and thirdly, unlocking the potential of our people, unleashing the potential of your people. And this doesn't just mean a build, borrow, buy kind of a strategy, right? I mean, it's not just that. But to your question on where else can it come in, for example, you realize that innovation is going to be a key differentiator in a certain product line that you want to introduce as a business strategy. Right? I mean, that's what you want to do as a business. Then you need to starting to measure innovation in your hiring practices. You need to differentiate people who are demonstrating that innovation in your promotion decisions, in your compensation decisions, and so on and so forth. So that is where it is not just about getting the talent in. Recruitment is an important piece, but across the HR spectrum, including what do you build, right? What kind of build, and culture as well. How do you celebrate and encourage innovation in people? Because if you have historically rewarded people or recognized people for compliance or doing what is expected, how are you going to recognize them for something disruptive that they bring in? And if your culture is really not amenable to people coming up with ideas, I mean, if you're very hierarchical in an organization, I mean, seniors are supposed to tell and juniors are supposed to do. That's not a very conducive culture for innovation. And you may have people who may not be able to accept the fact that somebody can come up with these ideas. In those cases, how do you ensure that culturally you help people pivot to a place where ideas are nobody's monopoly and everybody can come up with those ideas as well? I'm just trying to touch upon some, HR, areas where, you can, whatever it is that you're trying to do as a business, be it in performance, be it in compensation, be it in your hiring practices, be it in your recognition, or be it in, how the culture really plays out. I mean, can people differ? Can people differ openly? In a hierarchical setup would be a very good measure of innovation. And this is one example of innovation. And similarly, whatever you're trying to build as a differentiator for your strategy or in your strategy, HR can definitely play a role across all these dimensions.
Thanks, Shankar. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing
thank
that.
you.
Thanks, Suresh, for that question. I think, and thank you to all those who asked questions so far. Um, I would want to end with one final question that I have, which I'll borrow from Velalar as well as Uresh's question. I think, Shankar, Siddharth, what you both over the last few minutes have, been sort of sharing on is how do we build the capability within ourselves as HR partners to be able to show up better with strategic inputs in a strategy conversation, right? Uh, and I'm thinking now for teams, all of us working across different levels within your teams. And also to LLR's question that if AI is going to replace different roles, etc. And there is a whole conversation that work below the API will go, work above the API is what you can hope to do. So therefore, focus, are you working above the API or below the API? But just borrowing from there, how do we as individuals, as well as how you as leaders of teams, suggest that we create this time and space in our days, in our months, where we can build these capabilities? Like you said, if one needs to show up with competitive intelligence, you need to show the organization what they do, but also what the competition is doing, or learn more about the business, or just have enough space to gather intelligence to think one level or two levels above the process that you're so involved in running to perfection. Uh, how would you advise the practitioners here, experienced or starting their careers, to create this balance so that they are operating above the API in the years that we go ahead, and we can always add strategic value to conversations going forth?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to go first, but Siddharth, if you want to start off, that's be fine as well. I just wanted to add one more thing, Shivani, which touched upon the initial part of your question, and then I'll come to the second part. I talk of a four-step model, in trying to solve for, if you talk about strategy or problem solving, whatever it is. I think the first step is understanding the business. I think we've spoken enough about it. But oftentimes the missing piece is understanding the work as well. You really need to understand what people do. We don't spend enough time on that, because without really understanding what people do, be it hiring, skills, building strategy, you really cannot, come up with meaningful HR interventions. I say start with the business, understand the work, listen to the people, put all three together and come up with solutions. And it should not just stop with the business and the work. You need to listen to your people. As HR people, we have to hear the voice of our employees before we try and solve for anything. To your question on how do you find the space, frankly speaking, what has helped work for me and for people that I've seen being successful is curiosity. Curiosity is extremely important. If you start doing it because it's part of building a resume and stuff like that, I think it's a bit it's difficult. Then you will always say how much time you want to allocate. But if you're really curious about solving a problem, you will realize that you need to learn the business, and you can find enough friends in the business who will help you out as well. In terms of balancing the time, it's once again, see, it's like managing your time for anything. There will always be several things competing for your time and attention. Whatever is your priority and wherever you need to strengthen yourself, you just need to find the time. If it could be sometimes, oftentimes it could be out of your comfort zone as well, because you might not have done it in the past. In which case you just find those friends with whom you can have a frank conversation without being afraid of seen as someone who doesn't know or doesn't have the knowledge, and talk to people. I mean, typical coffee table conversations, finding friends with the business and understanding what they do. Just even it could simply be how are they spending their time, what are they spending their time on. Those relationship, those things can help. And to date, frankly speaking, access to information is not difficult at all. It's there inside your organization, outside your organization. I think it's this drive and curiosity. Finding help is not a problem. Finding time is not a problem. I think it's curiosity and drive, that is most important in my personal experience.
Thank you for sharing that, Shankar. Siddharth, your views?
I think I have a couple of very disparate, not so together elements to share with you. The first story I want to share with you is I was once the head of HR of a company that was into footwear, and I was completely lost because I did not come from retail, or I did not come from footwear. And the anecdote I want to tell you is that I learned more about uh, footwear by going to uh, the retail stores that were run by us and tying shoelaces on Saturdays and Sundays, and actually making the customers wear those shoes, speak to the customers, know who they are, what are they looking for, where do they come from, what are their needs, what is the market, what is the competition. So basically, what I'm trying to say is just know your customer, whoever is your customer, right? If it's a B2C company, then your customer is an actually consumer. But if it is a B2B company, then who your customer is. But by knowing the customer, by knowing their pain points, then knowing what they need, what the market is offering, what is competition, I think that really opens you up. And if you don't do that, and if you're just an HR person in a AC cabin or an office, in a corporate office, I'm afraid it'll take you very long to understand what problems there are before you can even solve them. Right? At Aether, I love spending time on our experience centers and watching people come by and ask for scooters, and speaking to them and seeing what is it that we can help them with. It really helps understand how I can help as a people partner to this electrical vehicle company. Right? The second thing I want to talk about is we talk about understand PNL, understand PNL. We just throw this out a lot, and I ask my teams to open PNLs, like to open financial statements, right, and just read them and see if they understand them, or if they have any questions about what are the various elements on them, right? Where money is actually spent, how is money coming in, where is money going out, and hence what the bottom line is. I think that kind of opens you up into what business we are in, and what are the various complications in running a business. How we find the time to share all this is we find forums to cascade information. So say we have 5 of us in a team, and I have had some experiences, and then they have had some experiences. We kind of come together and create rituals where we come and share with each other what we've learned over the last week or the last month, something specific that happened, an instance that happened. Say a talent partner learned something about an incident, they share, and then the remaining 4 learn from that incident, even though they didn't actually go through that experience. And now it's a collective shared experience, and it's accelerated. And the last thing is obviously like study circles. It's a great ritual to do. where you find time every month to say that, okay, this 1 hour, this person who is good at this is going to come and speak to us about this subject, and we're going to just go back to college for that 1 hour every month and learn. So I think all four very different, very disparate, but in my experience, all four kind of come together to really add value and make the difference. Uh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Shankar and Siddharth, for I think some very practical and meaningful advice that we can all take in. If I was to just look at what is perhaps at the heart of what you're saying that I'm taking away is just that there is so much of curiosity involved. That's something to never give up. And as you're curious, perhaps just get out of your own way, get out of your own head, and seek help. Make friends in business, get to know the customer, and enter the arena with great empathy. And maybe that's where we come out with the best solutions from. So I think that's some great learning to take away from this session. I personally have enjoyed so much learning from both of you. We hope this was a meaningful sharing experience for you as well. And we also hope that this was a meaningful session for our audiences. This session was brought to you by NHRDN, the National Human Resources Development Network, one of the largest and oldest, most reputed HR networks within the country. If you want to learn in more such ways through sessions, conferences, wonderful artifacts that we put out, consider becoming a member. But with that, I'd like to thank everybody who joined in today. Thank you. Hope this was meaningful and that you have a great weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Shivani.
you.
I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.